In the 1980s, George Michael was one of the most successful artists in the world, thanks in no small part to his Faith album, which had sold an enormous 12 million copies. However, his next two albums had been commercial disappointments. He also lost a high-profile court case, and tragically, his mother passed away. At the age of 34, George Michael was on a downward spiral, but more difficult personal issues were to follow.
Within the industry, George's sexuality was very well known.
It was an open secret that he was gay. But there were a lot of people who did not know, and it came as a bit of a shock.
I think one thing that needs to be said is that George didn't hide the fact that he was gay any more than entertainers had done for generations. There's a great English tradition, and I think American tradition as well, with film stars, Rock Hudson and others. People didn't ask you about your sexuality, so you didn't talk about it.
I wasn't a liar, but I was in a situation where I was so high profile, and by then I was already had an absolute hatred of the kind of tabloid press. So it was all getting very complicated. I didn't like the idea that they had something like that over me because they knew I was gay.
It's unfair to expect somebody to be out publicly when they are not yet out at home. And it took a while for George to be out at home because he came from this Greek macho man background. So he had to get through that, but he didn't get through it on a schedule with When I Have My First Hit Record. I mean, that's a different thing.
In fact, it took him 27 years to have his first serious relationship. His partner was Anselmo Felipe. Sadly, Anselmo passed away just 2 years into their relationship.
Oh, what can I say, really? Beautiful man, beautiful heart, terrible loss. It was 2 years. It was pretty shocking because obviously I'd waited until I was 27 to have my first proper relationship, and within 6 months, you know, I knew he was terminally ill. So it was a very shocking time. Never been so scared in my life. The fear of him dying was far greater than the grief. You know what I mean? But incredible lessons learnt, and you know, and 2 years of being with someone who is truly wonderful, beautiful person to learn those lessons from.
When you've never had a partner, to have a partner is uplifting beyond description. You could see that, from George's perspective, Anselmo merited the beautiful tributes that George paid to him in the songs after his death. I have to say, Jesus to a Child is one of the most beautiful songs of mourning ever recorded.
It was just mind-blowing for him. I think it was, one of the hardest things he'd ever had to come across in his whole life. And I don't know if you ever really get over things like that. I mean, you get used to it and you learn to deal with it. So, the loss of anybody, a loved one, a parent, anything like that is always, tough.
So, incredibly lucky to have met him. That's the way I look at it. And I wish it had been earlier. I wish I'd been myself earlier in life. But, better late than never.
Despite Anselmo's death hitting the headlines, George remained tight-lipped about his sexuality. However, something astonishing happened in Los Angeles in 1998 that made dodging the topic no longer possible. George was arrested for lewd behavior in a public toilet.
I don't think anybody was prepared for the exhibition in Los Angeles. I think that was a surprise.
It was like a double shock to the public to find that somebody that, a celebrity of that caliber was doing something like that.
It was, in every way, a setup, including me. That's the funny part. I was setting myself up as well. That's the funny part. There was collusion between my own anger and kind of mental anguish at losing my mother by that point, and collusion between that and all my feelings of anger and guilt, and collusion, as far as I was concerned, and I will always believe, between the police and the newspapers, and a few other people, unfortunately. But Again, you know, for some reason, I'm not intended to have a quiet life.
When George released his next single, Outside, he showed he had a sense of humor about the incident, with the accompanying video featuring disco dancing police officers. However, the arresting officer did not find it quite so amusing.
The cop tried to sue me for mental anguish because, of course, nothing goes on in Los Angeles of that enormity, no pun intended. Yeah, he sued me for mental anguish. And I love that video. I do love that video. I won't say it was worth getting arrested to make the video. Maybe for the song. And actually, if you saw the response during the show, because it's one of the highlights of the show, is me coming out in my police gear, you know? And I suppose all those nights that people have enjoyed it night after night on stage, listening to Outside or going crazy to it, maybe it was worth it, you know? Maybe it was worth it.
In another headline-grabbing move, George announced that his next album, Patience, would be his last record on sale to the public, and future releases would be available for free download only.
Well, actually, what I said was it would be available for free or for charitable donation if people wanted to. And the actual truth is nobody donated anything, so I've kind of withdrawn the idea, as it were. I mean, what I've said and what I still believe is that in order to make my life work for me in an industry which is falling apart, I think the things that I want to say are those things that I still have to say. I think are out of place now in the medium of pop. So I think I might have to look for other avenues in which to write. Because I'm not who I was even 5 years ago. You know, I've got some brand new ideas now, and I want them to be of some use. I've always believed that my creativity is with me for a reason, you know, and that always wanting to have a positive effect in life with what you create is something that is hard to give up. You know, even though it'd be lovely to be self-indulgent, I do really believe that there's a reason that I was given this gift. And it doesn't just have to be in my voice. You know, it's about things I want to say, you know. So we'll see. We'll see that the future is very open for me. But I think, having been hugely disappointed by people's charitable inclinations, let's say, lack of charitable inclinations, I think if I wanted to make money for charity, I'd have to go about releasing, you know, a song in the regular way and just giving the money away.
Never afraid to adapt, George Michael spent the first 10 years of his career turning himself into a pop icon. He then spent the next decade trying to work out how to be true to himself. After 20 years in the limelight,